Hey everybody, how's it going? You guys doing good? Woo! You guys awake? Yeah. Okay. No. Okay. Do we need to run around the room? No. I make the middle schoolers jump up and down sometimes, but I won't do that to you. Anyways, welcome. This has nothing to do with me. I'm so sorry. Pretend like I know. It looks really, really good though. So maybe just take a picture of it anyways. Anyways, welcome to Youth Pastor Roundtable Breakout session. My name's Alyssa and my husband and I were the next gen pastors here at Victory. And so today I'm going to be talking to you not only as a pastor, but more so as a therapist. I get to do therapy one time a week. And so the title of today's talk is Healing Through Connection. Practical tools to help students who are struggling. So whenever Ben and I first started in ministry, we had this group of middle school boys. Anybody work with middle schoolers, know about middle schoolers? Okay, so middle school boys are their own. And so we had this group of middle school boys that were they were constantly getting in trouble, but there was this one little boy who would he would lay on the platform while the worship team was playing and try to grab their feet. He would jump on the furniture during the message, all kinds of crazy things were happening all the time with this child. We knew him very well from the very beginning because he was constantly getting in trouble. And he was getting in trouble. We were having conversations with mom. All kinds of things were happening. But over the years, he eventually stopped coming. And he never made the jump to going to our high school ministry. And then as time went on, Ben and I found out that his home life was actually really bad. Dad was a very harsh man. Things at home were just very rocky, living in poverty, all kinds of things. And I think back to that little guy. Now he's an adult, but I think back to him and I just think about what if we would have taken the time to slow down and just connect with him? What if we would have looked beyond the behaviors and just connected with him? Would he have stuck it out in youth ministry? Would he have continued coming to church? One of the greatest human needs that we have is to be understood. And so after these last few years, they've been pretty crazy, right? Our students have gone through so much emotional hardship with just everything going on with COVID, all of the political divide, everything that they've been experiencing. We've been experiencing it too, but it's actually hit the students harder than it ever hit us. The reason why that is because they're in the stages of development. You and I as adults, we've already developed, our personality is pretty much set, who we are is set, but people who are in those developmental stage, these things that are happening have actually left an imprint on them. It's affected their development, it's affected their personality, it's affected who they are. And so for them, it's a little bit of a harder struggle for them to move beyond the things that we've gone through these past couple of years. On top of that, there's also social media, there's technology, there's the LGBTQ movement, there's all kinds of things that are going on in our culture, and it's been placed on our teenagers. There's not a buffer, there's not this protective factor like there was whenever I was younger, where we just didn't know much about what was going on, but now everything is just placed on our youth and just put on their shoulders at an age that they are just not equipped to handle it. And all of this has played a big part in the reason why we've had this mental health crisis in our youth. So before the pandemic, this is from 2019 statistics. Since 2007, suicide rates have increased 76% for ages 15 to 19. This is the highest increase in the demographic. Suicide rates have nearly doubled in teen girls, and the highest rate of increase in suicide among all age groups is ages between 10 to 14 years old. And the sad thing is that we're starting to see suicide happening younger and younger, suicide ideations happening younger, even, 3-year-olds have committed suicide. It's extremely alarming. Depressive symptoms are up 21% in boys, 50% in teens. Suicide attempts among Black teens has increased 73% between 1991 and 2017. And this is before the pandemic, so I don't even know what the statistics are after the pandemic. And so while all of that is very alarming, and all of that, I'm sure you guys have heard these statistics or something like them where it's just wow, that really sucks, Alyssa, way to bring us down. But I want to give you guys some good news. because you guys get to be a part of the answer. You guys are all uniquely positioned to help those who are struggling. You guys actually have power, you have influence, and you have authority to make a difference in the lives of youth. You can actually change the trajectory of where our youth are going. So we are not powerless. We are just not like, we're just going to do our best and hopefully they turn out okay. No, you and I are in a great position to help our students to process and to heal from everything that's been going on. And if you have teenagers in this room, these tools will be especially helpful for you because parents are obviously the most influential person in teenagers' lives. And so I'm going to give you guys some tools to help your teenagers that are practical. And again, parents, definitely use these on your teenagers because this is something that will help you and to help your child to be able to grow and to heal from. And so what I'm going to be teaching you on today, I'm going to give you some tools for your toolbox. I'm sure we've all heard that term. A lot of times pastors and youth leaders, we're equipped spiritually, but we forget that people are a three-part being. We have a soul, a spirit, and a body. And so a lot of times spiritual leaders and pastors, we are equipped with spiritual tools. But the thing with mental health is it is a soulish part of people. And so we need to be equipped with soulish tools. That's a weird word, but soul tools. And so I want to give you some of those tools to use in conjunction with, prayer, discipleship, having all these conversations with them, pastoring them. You still want to do all these other things. And so this is to intermix with what you're already doing as pastors and as youth leaders. And so I'm going to do some brain science first, if that's okay. And if you know anything about the brain, I'm going to simplify it very much. And so when I say these things, you're like, Alyssa, that's not quite right. I'm just going to give it in general terms. So I'm going to simplify the brain to two parts. We have the right side of the brain, which is our emotional processing. That's where our amygdala is. That's where fight, flight, or freeze, survival mode, that's where that happens. The left side of the brain, that's the logical processing. That is your prefrontal cortex. That is where your decision making happens. That's wherever you can think through facts, you can decide pros and cons, and so that's where that part happens. So whenever Ben and I first got married, when people get married, you'd do all the things that you couldn't do when you were dating. So we decided to be ambitious, and we went on a kayak camping trip. Yes, we did that. And we were like, let's go for 4 days. Let's just do this. We've never done this before, never gone camping before, but yeah, let's do this. And so what you do is you show up to this spot, you have all of your gear, you have your kayak, and they drop you off in the water, and then you pick which spot you want picked up at, and then what day you want picked up. So again, we picked the 4-day trip. Stupid, very stupid. Okay, so we strap all of our stuff to our kayak. We have a floating cooler. Don't do that. Okay, we're bogged down. We're in the Clarion River, which has a very strong current, but we have so much stuff on our kayaks. We're putting along. It's so bad. But they told us where to stop the first night. And so we're kayaking, doing our thing. And we're realizing everything looks the same. It's just all woods and land around us. There's not these landmarks. We're just kind of going along, and it's starting to get dark. And so we're like, oh my gosh, we have to pull off. We need to make a camp, which that takes a lot of work. And so it's getting dark, so we pull off. And so when I went to get out of my kayak, my shoe fell off, and the current was going really fast, and I couldn't catch it. And so there went my shoe. So this was one of the many issues from the beginning. So we pulled off. We realized this is not a place that you camp. The weeds are really high. And so we get out our machetes. We machete to a spot that had a clearing. And so we set up camp. We put our food in the tree so the bears, don't come, whatever. We do all the stuff. We make dinner over a fire. And then we're just going straight to bed. We're exhausted. So we're in our tent. And Ben's like, do you hear that? No. Yeah, it's probably a raccoon. Do you hear that? I think it's just a bird. Do you hear that? Yeah, but just go to sleep. And then finally he gets out of the tent with his gun and he's pacing around the tent with his gun. And I'm like, please just go to sleep. And he's like, I have to protect you. And I'm like, I'm fine. I just want to go to bed. And so I come out because I'm like, he's going to shoot himself. I don't know what's going to happen. And so I'm out there and he's and we're looking. We found a porcupine, so that was fun. But he's hearing all these noises and he's on high alert. And I'm like, you know what? You stay out here with your gun. I'm going to go back in the tent and I'm going to sleep. He stayed out there most of the night on high alert, ready to take down whatever predator came. Needless to say, that was an only one night camping trip. But anyways, when Ben was in that moment, he was using his right side of his brain. The adrenaline was shooting up and cortisol, the stress hormone, was being released. And so he went into fight, flight, or freeze. Now I know Ben is a fighter whenever he goes into that part of his brain. And so normally this is a good thing. God put this in our bodies because if there was a threat, if there actually would have been a bear or some, murder or whatever, Ben was ready. Okay, Ben was on guard. But our bodies were created that way so that we could bypass the logical part of our brain and react. And so it's a great design. But the issue comes whenever we experience stress over a prolonged period of time. That cortisol hormone, it just kind of is on like a steady drip in our bodies. And what ends up happening is we are predominantly living out of the right side of our brain. And over time, what happens is the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain, they become dispaired. And so they're not talking like they should be. And so if you've ever seen somebody who's in this state, they can't logically process their emotions. Teenagers, we know that this happens often with them, where they just don't have words to it. They're not thinking logically. Like, you can give them logic, it's not making any sense to them. And so when somebody's in this dispaired spot, it's actually they become in despair. So dispaired, brains are dispaired, but they are in despair. So despair is when somebody feels hopeless and disconnected from their emotional state. So what you might actually see physically is you might see somebody who's in a panic attack. You might see somebody who begins cutting, or you find out that they've been cutting, somebody who seems numb, somebody that's withdrawn, somebody that just starts kind of living and doing things differently than they normally have. That is a external sign that there's despair going on. And what's going on is the right side and the left side of the brain are not talking anymore. So they are living out of that right side, that emotional brain, and they're not logically processing their emotions anymore. They can't verbalize, oh, I feel sad, or I feel this way, or I feel all these different emotions. It's like they're kind of stuck. Psychologists call this an emotional detachment. They can't put those emotions into words, and so their blood is literally flowing predominantly to the right side of the brain, and so that logical processing decreases. So these people are not making the best decisions. You can't talk to them logically. It's just not going to work. But just like the brain responds predictably to stress, the brain also responds predictably to love and empathy. When somebody feels seen, when somebody feels connected with, when somebody feels cared for, the brain starts to work a different way. Oxytocin is the love hormone. That gets released. And so when we feel that connection with somebody, it actually takes you back to early childhood. And what I'm saying is like baby stages, right? When they're infant, whenever they're one, what does a mom do when she's holding her baby? She's looking right in the eye. That baby feels safe, secure. The diapers change. They've been fed. They're warm. They're comfortable. And so while the person can't logically tell you this, you're taking them back. When you look at somebody in the eye and you're seeing them and you're connecting with them, you're taking them back to those early attachment years, and you're helping to reconnect the brain. And so when people feel connected with, when they feel loved, it helps the brain to come back together and repairs that disconnect between the left side and the right side. So this is all really good news for us because we have the ability, we're in positions of influence where we can do this with our students. And you can do this with adults. This is not just for students, this is not just for children, but this is for adults as well. So you can try this with other people. But with all of this, connection is key. So I'm going to give you 5 connection tools tonight, or today, whatever time of the day it is, 5 connection tools that are easy to apply. And so the first one, you're going to be like, what, Alyssa? The first one is to show up. Simply show up. That's 50% of the work is for you to simply show up. And what I mean by that is texting is really good with students, but face-to-face empathy is processed differently than digital empathy. So yeah, you should be following up with students and texting them, but when you're face-to-face with them, their brain processes it differently and it hits them differently in a good way. And so I'm going to give you 2 parts of showing up that we need to do. So the first one, when we show up, is we want to show up before they ask us to. So we want to create spaces for them to talk with us. So outside of small groups, if we do the small group model here, so outside of the small group time, when are you connecting with students so that they can predict, she's going to be talking with me, he's going to be talking with me, I know that my small group leader, or I know that my pastor's checking in with me. When do we have those spaces to talk? Now for us, Adam and Lex are over our high school ministry, Mariah's over our middle school ministry. They cannot individually connect with all of the students in those ministries, but through our small group leaders and our other leaders, that's how this connection happens. So for you guys, you have to think, okay, how can all of my students be connected with? Because one person cannot connect with everybody. But for girls, this is easy. We're fine. We'll just talk all day. Girls like blah, 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 blah. We'll talk, we're good. But guys are different. So if you're a guy in the room, I encourage you to do activities with the guys that you are leading, whether you're leading leaders, whether you're leading students. Do an activity. Guys do better side by side. They're not going to talk to you like this. It's going to be awkward. It's uncomfortable. Dudes are too tough anyways. They need to talk like this. And so do like some football. Thanksgiving's coming up. Do a turkey bowl event. Like that's a perfect thing to do. Like that's cheap. That's easy. Do something like that. Get together and make meat. I don't know. Guys like meat. I don't understand. But these are just some ideas. It's right. It's totally right. Do something like that. Because the more opportunities that you create for people to open up, the more information you're going to get from people. So when Ben and I were overseeing our middle school ministry, we were in a different room, and we had basketball hoops outside of that room. And so after service, I would play knockout because I don't do basketball, but I do knockout. I was playing knockout with a whole bunch of students like I normally do. And it was towards the end of service. Students were dismissed, but this one girl stayed. And she was newer, but I was starting to get to know her, building relationship. We're playing, we're shooting hoops, talking. When all of a sudden she says, "My uncle raped me." And I'm like, oh, snap. Like, it's 11:30 on a Sunday. Like, you think you're, like, going home. I'm not going home. And so I, like, slow it down. Okay, don't act alarmed, Alyssa. And I slow it down, start to just kind of hold the ball. And then I engage with her. I'm pulling out information, getting some more facts. We had to report, obviously, on that one. But she had a space that she was able to talk. And she knew, okay, Alyssa's usually out here playing knockout. And so she stayed. When everybody else left, she stayed. And that just allowed her to open up to me. So we want to show up before they ask us to. And then the second one is to show up undistracted. Show up undistracted. So a lot of times, yes, students are on their phones, but as leaders, sometimes we can be on our phones a little bit too much. The other way that sometimes I see leaders get distracted, and this is more so in our culture than, I don't know what your cultures are at your churches, but I see leaders just talking to each other. And we're over here. And I've done it too. I'm totally guilty. Where you're just like, hey, my friends are here. I'm talking and I'm connecting. But over here, there's a girl sitting all by herself. Or there's a boy that's just walking around like on his phone trying to, pretend like he's fitting in. And so we want to not be distracted by the other leaders, by our friends, by whatever's going on. And obviously there's going to be meetings that need to take place, but at the same time, we want to make sure that primarily we're focusing on the students or whomever it is that we are there to care for at that time. Because the reality is, I don't know if anybody in here in children's ministry? Children's? Okay. So with little kids, like my daughter Mila, she's 6. So she has a lot of different teachers in her room. So her teacher can say something and she comes home and whatever they said, like it is truth. Like she doesn't really know them, but like her teacher said it, so it's truth because that person is in a positional authority figure. But whenever you get into like 7th grade and beyond, positional authority means nothing. You could be a leader in their life and you say something that's like, wait, that was amazing. And they won't hear you because your position doesn't matter. You have to have relationship. And so we need to make sure that we are building relationship. And so showing up is that first step. Second tool that I want to give you is we need to see the students. See the students. Teenagers naturally, their brains are not, so beyond the despairing part, their brains they shut down around puberty and they're already kind of in that emotional state. And so the prefrontal cortex is like already barely working. So got to help them out. It's really unfortunate. It's like, why God? But a lot of times students, they don't have the ability to verbally process their emotions. So that's why you see that moody teenage girl. That's why you see that kid kick the ball really hard because they just can't process their emotions. They literally don't have the capacity. And so somebody who's in despair is even further off struggling with this. And so we need to see beyond the behavior and see why they feel what they feel or what they're feeling. And so we don't want to ask the question of what's wrong with them. We want to ask what's going on with them or what's happened to them. And so we want to change our mindset from, okay, that kid's just a troublemaker to, okay, that person's going through somebody. And so this is key. When you see somebody who's in this place of emotion, you see somebody who's struggling, you don't meet them with logic, even though logically it's like, okay, clearly this is the answer to your problem right now. They're not going to hear you. You want to meet emotion with emotion. You want to be on that right side of the brain, or else they will not be able to hear you. And what I mean by that is it's not you're coming in hot, all emotional too, like, yeah, let's get them. You're not like coming in angry and emotional, but you're coming in and you're saying, okay, what's going on? You're trying to connect with their emotion, trying to understand, why are you feeling what you're feeling right now? Why am I seeing this behavior? Why am I seeing this outburst? Why am I seeing you struggling so bad? And so you must first start with emotion. And then once you've connected with them emotionally through some processes, then you can get them with logic. But first, you start with emotion. And so what they're feeling right now, or at that moment, is it's like they're taking an emotional inhale. And they're holding their breath and they can't exhale. And so when you come along and connect with them, that's them exhaling. This summer, Ben went on a 8-day missions trip. And so that was me alone with the kids, all by myself. And day one, my son Eli, who's 3, he was just acting up, totally defiant. And for 3 days, it was so terrible in my house. I was like crying. I could not wait for bedtime. It was just awful. Everything I said, it was just no. I was wrestling him to try to get him out the door. He just totally, his behavior was awful. And then finally I'm like, okay, this isn't normal. Ben's gone. Something's going on. So I do Calming Corner, where I have their emotion chart, and we talk about this I talk about this with my kids often. And so I sat down in the Calming Corner with him and I said, hey, what's going on? And he's 3, so we're having a 3-year-old conversation. But eventually he was able to say he was sad, so that was a good start. And then eventually I was able to get out of him that he missed Daddy. And so then we talked about that, and we talked about all the things we like about Daddy. And then my action step was, okay, let's make something for Daddy. Let's FaceTime him. And so, but after that conversation, his behavior went back. It was 180, but I was able to connect with him emotionally. And so I was able to look past the behaviors. After disciplining him hard for 3 days, then I was able to connect with him and see beyond that. And so a lot of times our students need that. And we need to put ourselves in a position to connect with them and help them identify what they're feeling. Then the third tool is just listen. Just listen. And so I have more on this topic. I'm not going to go into all of this because I'm not going to have time today. But I have other tools on how to get people talking and to how to have a deeper conversation. So if you want that, I will send you that teaching that I have. I've already done that. I'll send that to you. I'm not going to go into that today. I'll go into a little bit, but not all of it. But with listening, people don't always know actually how to listen. A lot of times when you're listening, you're half in and half out. Oh, what am I going to do today? Oh, I really like her outfit. Oh, what do I need to get at the store? Or what am I going to say after this person's done talking? And it comes back to us. But we need to be actively listening. We need to be fully engaged, because the issue isn't what advice we give them. The issue is a lot of times we're not listening well, and we can't give them the proper advice or the proper help because we didn't listen well in the first place. So we want to be active listening. And so what that looks like is we want to talk minimally. The goal is to get them to talk. Yeah, you have really great advice and wisdom to offer them. Yes, wait. Because first you must get them engaged with you, and you must get them talking. That is the key. If they even if you just got them talking and that's all you did, you've won. And so you want them to talk, you talk minimally, and you concentrate on what's being said. You're not going places in your head. Yeah, sometimes you'll wonder, but just bring it back. Remember, okay, here I am. This is going to take some energy on your part. It's not something that's natural. It's something that you have to practice and get better at. And you want to hear how words are being said. What tone are they using? That's really key, because their tone and their body posture is communicating a lot. So don't just listen to the words, but look at how they're sitting, what their face looks like, how they're saying what they're saying, what kind of words are coming out of their mouth, what adjectives are they using. That'll tell you so much if you just read between the lines. We're not interrupting, so we're not chiming in oh, this one time. No. Wait. The gold is in what they're saying. That is how you will be prepared in helping them. You want to accurately hear the content. So this is you asking clarifying questions. You know, once there's that moment break, you just checking in. Okay, I think I heard you say blah, 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 blah. You want to accurately hear the feelings of the person. And so this is where empathy comes in. Empathy is key. I've been working with Ben on this for years, and he's getting way better at it. Empathy is thinking, what would it be like to be this person? What is it like to be in their shoes? And actually think, okay, what would it be like to, okay, I just got a D on my math test, and I put on clothes today, and I don't fit in with all the other girls, and so I don't feel pretty. Like, what would it be like to be in that person's shoes? Even though logically maybe you're like, well, there's some other solutions, but what would it be like to be them right then? And so when you're hearing those emotions, you want to make sure you're echoing those back to make sure you're accurate. And then you want to look as though you're listening. That's key. You don't want to be like, or like on your phone, or like this. Like, your body posture really matters. Is my body posture inviting? Is my face inviting? Or do I look like I'm going to rip your face off? Like, you want to have all of this going on. When Ben doesn't do this with other people, but with me, I can't even do it. But he twitches his leg the whole time while I'm talking to him. And so I'm just like, why are you so anxious? I'm anxious. I can't talk to him when he does that. And so I grab his leg and I'm like, stop it. Because for me, it makes me anxious. And so think about, what quirks do I have when I'm talking to somebody? I used to click my pen a lot whenever I was like a first-time therapist, and I would be like this. And I'm like, okay, for my ADHD clients, this is really rude. And so you just have to think about, like, what am I doing that is affecting this conversation? And then take your time. Obviously, if service ends, there's some things, but as much as you can, take your time with that person. You don't need to rush it, because what's happening in those moments is your listening is releasing that oxytocin. You're helping to bring the two sides together. So what seems simple to you, what seems almost insignificant, is actually healing that damage that's going on in their brain. Yeah. I'm not going to go through that other stuff. Okay, but if you need more about like how to get people talking, I'll send you that link. Just let me know. And so then if somebody does tell you something big, like I've had suicidal thoughts, I've been cutting, abuse, all of that, all those big topics, you want to thank them for sharing that with you. Thank you for being so vulnerable with me. I know that was really hard. I appreciate you trusting me. Affirm them, encourage them, and then ask them, is it okay if we get help together? Even if they say no, sorry, you're going to get help together. And so make sure you know what your church's policy is on suicide, on abuse. Always tell somebody above you. Never keep that to yourself. Always, always, always tell leadership. There's been times where Ben and I haven't been at a service, and then we find out the next day that suicide came out. And we're like, don't you ever keep that, please always tell us, because you want to help your pastor to pastor. And they can't pastor properly if they don't have that information. And then, again, make sure you kind of know what are their steps on getting help with that. Okay, the fourth tool is to speak life. So after you've listened, after they've emotionally exhaled, then we speak life. And again, if you've listened well, then you can help well. Then you can speak life better. We have a very negative culture, and our students are getting a barrage of negative messages over and over again. And so we need to counter that by speaking life. Researchers suggest that we generate at least 3 positive comments or feelings for each negative expression, but 5 would be ideal. Okay, so I'm just thinking about the normal teenager going throughout their day, the texts that they get, the stuff they see on social media, the things that are said to them at school, how many negative things are being said to them, and just how much positivity you need to speak over them. And so the issue is that our brain has a negativity bias where we naturally will lean into the negativity more than the positivity. So recently I spoke at our high school ministry and on Wednesday, and I got really good positive feedback, and then I got one mediocre feedback. And it wasn't even bad. It wasn't even negative, but it was mediocre. And my first thought was, oh, I suck. I failed. I messed up. And so our brain that's negativity bias. We naturally will go with the negative comment. Even though we've had 10 positive comments, our brain is wired to go that way. And so we want to make sure that we are showering the students with positive comments, ones that are life-giving. And so speaking life means to be intentionally encouraging kids by using words that are fruitful, purposeful, and positive. This is not blowing smoke and you're just saying whatever you feel like saying, but it is very intentional and very specific to that student because they'll know if you're being fake. You want to keep it short, keep it simple, and think about it like this. Every student is like a treasure chest. What is the treasure on the inside of them that maybe they don't know about? See the treasure in them and call it out. That's speaking life. Help them to see the things in themselves that they can't see. Maybe it's very obvious, but they can't see it. Speak out the good that God has put in them. And so as you speak life, this actually is helping to rewire their brain and to think the way that God thinks, to think a more positive way and to not follow those neural pathways that are negative. And so then the last tool I want to give you is you want to help them to build grit. You want to help them to build grit. This isn't you saying, suck it up, buttercup, just rub some dirt in it, you'll be fine. This is not that. But there comes a point when they have to be able to deal with the negativity and the stuff on their own and kind of, not completely on their own, but be able to filter through some things. And so we want to help them to reframe their thoughts and renew their mind. Philippians 4:8, it says, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing, fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. So I'm going to give you an acronym of how you can do this, how you can help students to do this, and it's the acronym of THINK, T-H-I-N-K. So for the T, you want to ask, is this thought true? Is it true? Oh, I'm so stupid. Well, is that true? You actually have really good grades and you just built a computer. Like, is it really true that you're dumb? Like, ugh. Okay, so then the H, is it helpful? Maybe it is true, but is this helpful? Is this going to help you in any way? Is it going to produce any good fruit in your life? Or is it only going to produce bad fruit and put you on the wrong path? For I, the question is it inspiring? Does this push you towards the things of God? Or does it kind of hold you back and put you in a rut of like, oh, I'm so terrible. And that pity party where we just go down that path and like everything's terrible. And then the N, is it necessary? Should I even be thinking about this thought? Is it even worth my time? Does it help anything in any way, shape, or form? Or is it a total waste of my time? And then for the K, is it kind? We are so mean to ourselves. If we said some of the things that we say to ourselves to other people, we would probably have no friends. Like, we are very nasty to ourselves. And so we want to ask ourselves, am I being kind to myself? 2 Corinthians 10:5, it says, take every thought captive and make it obedient to Christ. And so we want to help the students to do that. We want them to feel empowered. Not that they have to rely on other people to help them, but we want them to know, no, you have the power to take this negativity and turn it into positive. We want them to know, like, no, you do not have to be assaulted by thoughts of the enemy, by thoughts of this world. No, you can take them captive and actually do something with this. And so these are the 5 tools I wanted to give you guys today. I know they were simple, but I want to encourage you that you can make a difference. It's very easy to just come in and serve and do your thing and think, nothing I'm doing is changing anything. It doesn't even matter. But a lot of times, especially with teenagers, you're not always going to see the fruit right away. And you might actually never see the fruit. But just know that every time you're connecting, you're helping to repair the brain. You are literally helping to do something that you can't even see it. But know that what you're doing matters. You guys are called to this. You have a purpose in this. God has placed you in this position for a reason at this time, in this season, right where you're at, because he has called you to be an influencer over this next generation and to turn the tide from being in a mental health crisis to being empowered mentally. And so I'm going to pray over you guys, and then I'm going to open it up to questions. Father God, I just thank you for every single person in this room. Lord, I thank you for what you have called them to. God, I thank you, Holy Spirit, that you've placed them in these positions, that you just remind them of the great work that they're doing through you, that you just show them the impact that they're making, that anybody who feels discouraged today, that God, that you would just encourage them, that you would show them the fruit that they're producing. I thank you, God, for this, and I just ask that you put people in their path that they can help with. Put students in their path that they can help to be a part of the healing process and put that connection back together. We thank you for this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.